So last year I felt like trying out a couple of different video game franchises to expand my variety. Doesn't hurt to try out new things every once in a while, right? And that's what got me introduced to an RPG social simulator franchise called the Persona series. I first heard about these games through a couple of friends via the internet who would talk non-stop about them day and night. Ultimately, I started out with Persona 4 and then Persona 3 for the PS2. And then they became my favorite games that I played last year. I just really loved the addictive gameplay, the mysteries at hand, and the lovable cast of characters these games offer. With this much love for two games, I needed to find the other games in this wonderful franchise. Little did I know, however, that I realized the developers, Atlus, love to make a shit ton of spin-offs for the Persona series ever since the release of the fourth game. Some of which include two fighting games by the name of Arena and Arena Ultimates and a dancing game? What? For today, we're actually going to take a look at one of these spin-offs. Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth. Developed and published by Atlus, once again, and released on November 25th, 2014 for the Nintendo 3DS, Persona Q is a dungeon crawler RPG crossover including the characters from both Persona 4 and 3. Now upon discovering it, this sounds really exciting and seems like a ton of fun. This game contains two of the greatest cast of characters in video games I've ever witnessed, and I don't think I need to go into detail about how much fun I had playing both of these games. Was this game as incredible as I thought it would? Well, let's talk about that. Persona Q's story is divided into two parts where you can choose between playing as the Persona 4 protagonist or the Persona 3 protagonist. Taking place on October 30th, 2011 on the Persona 4 side, and September 20th, 2009 on Persona 3's side. The overall plot of the game remains the same no matter whose point of view you want to experience it from, and has only a few minor changes. Playing as the Persona 3 protagonist will start out with him and the members of Seas and Tartarus, and then suddenly end up in the Velvet Room elevator, transferring them into Yasogami High, where the cast of Persona 4 go to school. The Persona 4 protagonist, on the other hand, has a normal day going to school and joining the culture festival at his school with the investigation team. That is until our heroes from both sides hear a bell from a mysterious clock tower, which somehow traps them in the school. They then uncover labyrinths, keep it true to the title, inside many of the different culture festival attractions containing shadows out to kill whatever they spot. That's when they come across these two curious looking fellas by the names of Zen and Rei who have amnesia. Now the two groups have to fight off the shadows and go further into the labyrinths in order to get out of this parallel universe and to find out who Zen and Rei really are. The story in itself has been done plenty of times and is nothing new. In fact, it's pretty goddamn predictable. A group of people, for no reason whatsoever, time travel to a random place in the universe. Oh hey, there are other Persona users just like us. We're getting along oh so damn well, but aw, there's an obvious as hell ending waiting around the corner, but I can't say because spoilers. That really sucks. The same thing can be said for Zen and Rei's amnesia. They have absolutely no idea what happened in the past or who they really are, so they have to uncover the truth on who they really are. It's so damn cliched and has been done to death in other video games before. But to an extent, I will admit that my curiosity does get the better of me, and I want to know who these two really are, so I suppose I'll give them a little bit of credit there. So yeah, the story of Persona Q is really nothing that spectacular or groundbreaking. Thankfully, the cast of characters make up for that mediocre story. I made it quite clear that I absolutely love Persona 4 and 3's characters. I just adored how they interacted between one another and how mature yet funny they can be. So really, anything I could say about the characters in both of those games can be traced back here. There's of course the protagonists, their canon names being Makoto Yuki and Yuna Okami. Aside from that, starting with Persona 3's characters, we've got Yukari Takaba, who by the way gets way too much unnecessary hate for the stupidest reasons, Junpei Iori, Akihiko Sanada, Mitsuru Kirijo, Fuka Yamagishi, Aegis, a robot whose primary focus is to exterminate, well, shadows of course, Koromaru, yes, a dog is a Persona user, Ken Amada, and Shinjiro Aragaki. And for Persona 4's characters, we have Yosuke Hanamura, Chie Satanaka, Yukiko Amagi, Kanji Tatsumi, Rize Kujikawa, Teddy, a bear that also has a human form, and Naoto Shirogane. Aside from our heroes, we also have the previously mentioned Zen and Rei, and the residents of the Velvet Room where our protagonists can get new personas, which consist of Margaret, Elizabeth, and two characters only known through different versions of these games, Theodore and Marie. Since I'm now getting into the characters, I might as well explain who these two are. You see, Persona 3 and 4 had ports to systems other than the PS2. Persona 3 had a port to that one handheld anyone hardly buys, named Persona 3 Portable, and Persona 4's port was on that other handheld anyone hardly ever buys, by the name of Persona 4 Golden. In Persona 3 Portable, you get to play as a female version of the protagonist, and that's where you meet Theodore in the Velvet Room instead of Elizabeth. And in Persona 4 Golden, Maria is one of the added bonuses to the game, along with a few extra scenes they included in there. It was pretty cool that the developers for Persona Q included these two characters from the ports of Persona 3 and 4 and didn't leave them forgotten in the abyss. It was nice that they knew these ports existed and had major differences between them and the versions on the PS2. The characters in Persona Q are easily what I consider to be the main highlights of the game since they're so damn likable, mature, and hilarious, combined with the interactions they have with one another being mildly entertaining. It certainly makes up for the story that really isn't all that special. It balances out there quite nicely. As if it wasn't obvious enough, the presentation for Persona Q is quite different compared to the two games that it crosses over with. This game's art style on the characters is what the Japanese like to call chibi, meaning short person, which is not in any way referring to midgets.
It's little people.
Yeah, whatever. The chibi form of the characters are all cute and they blend in with the environments quite nicely. The female characters and Koromaru in particular are just flat out adorable in their chibi forms. In fact, it makes them even more precious than they already were. I just want to pinch their cute little cheeks and nuzzle their little faces and give them tons of huggies and never let them go. At the same time, sure they may look all cutesy with this graphical approach, but they still manage to kick some ass whenever they have the opportunity. Just because a character can bring out your cute-gasms, that doesn't automatically mean they can't beat the stuffing out of some baddies. I mean, look at characters like Mako from Kill la Kill and Hinata Hyuga, for example. Cute, adorable, and can still put some jerkwads in their place. The voice acting for the characters is top-notch like always. A majority of the cast and crew reprise their roles to voice these characters once again, and Bon Jovi are they amazing. The reason I say majority is because there are a few characters in the game who receive different voice actors at some point during the many ports and spin-offs for Persona 3 and 4. The characters in question, if you're wondering, are Chie, Kanji, Teddy, Ken, and especially Fuka. Going through them one by one, Chie used to be voiced by someone called Tracy Rooney in the original game on the PS2. And for every other game after that, she's voiced by Aaron Fitzgerald, who you might remember to be the voice of Naz from Ed, Edd n Eddy, Noir from Hyperdimension Neptunia, and Toko split personality Genocide Jill from Danganronpa. And personally, I thought Fitzgerald nailed the tomboyish nature and personality for Chie better than Tracy did.
My parents don't know anything about electronics, and I've just gotta see my kung fu movies on the big screen! Wata!
My parents don't know anything about electronics, and I've just gotta see my kung fu movies on the big screen! Wata!
Kanji's voice actor from the original game, the Golden Remastered version, one of the arena games, and half of the episodes from the anime, is the amazing, wonderful, and handsome Troy Baker, and Matthew Mercer is in everything else. Which I myself was shocked to find out because, my god, their voices sound very damn similar.
Oh, I get it. What you're really asking is, will you please beat the shit out of me, Kanji?
Just enter the damn thing! I need you to do this so it will clear up a few things for me! Come on, make me a man already!
I swear, you probably couldn't tell them apart because I sure as hell didn't at first. Props to Mercer in particular for sounding practically like Troy Baker. All in all, they do a great job voicing Kanji. Teddy was originally voiced by Dave Wittenberg, the voice of Kakashi from Naruto, and now from Arena and onwards, his voice is provided by Sam Riegel, one of the voices for my main man Donnie from TMNT, and Tennessee Kid Cooper from Sly 4. Like with Chie, I definitely prefer Riegel's voice since he sounds less high-pitched and scratchy sounding in comparison.
It seems much worse than that time with Yuki-chan's shadow. At this rate, it might end up getting bare naked. It seems much worse than that time with Yuki-chan's shadow. At this rate, it might end up getting bare naked.
Plus, Teddy doing his flirting with the ladies and hearing Riegel's voice coming out, it's a beautiful creation. Ken was voiced by Brienne Sedal and is now voiced by Cindy Robinson, who also voices Amy Rose in one of the sexiest women you'll ever see in video games. Oh, I'm sorry, Makoto Namiya from BlazBlue.
It looks very natural on you. No one will suspect a thing. But why does he want you to go to school? It's not like there's anything special about it. Making my life my own is actually pretty hard. Sometimes I lose sight of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Not really much to say for this one, honestly. All that needs to be said is that they both do a nice job voicing Ken. And the biggest, most obvious change would have to be Fuka's voice actress. Look, I really love Fuka, I do, but her voice from the original game is just... God, I don't even know what that is.
So there are strange creatures in here then. I've managed to avoid them so far.
It is like some high schooler's very first time acting, but doesn't know the meaning of that word and struggles to sound convincing in the slightest. She ended up getting a much-needed improved voice actress in the form of Wendy Lee, the voice of Akane Awari, Tatsuki from Bleach, and Blanc/Whiteheart.
Are you all okay? I don't sense any enemies nearby, so please concentrate on regaining your strength.
Now that voice sounds like a good match for a timid woman like Fuka. So in the end, the newer voice actors and the ones who reprise their roles do a fantastic job voicing these magnificent characters. The last thing to cover is that the soundtrack is a good listen. Special shoutouts go to the FOE battle theme, Corn Dog, and especially Laserbeam. However, at the same time, the soundtrack is also one of the only problems I have with this game when it comes to its presentation, but we'll come back to that later. Also, am I the only one who thinks that the mouths on the characters are very blurry? I hope that isn't just me because I have a 2DS instead of a 3DS. Even then, the presentation is absolutely great. If I were to choose something besides the characters, this would probably be the game's strongest aspect. Especially compared to what we have to talk about next. And that would have to be... the gameplay. Ooh boy, do I have quite a bundle load to say about that. Unlike its predecessors where it combines RPG elements with life simulation elements, Persona Q functions as a 2D dungeon crawler RPG, as our two groups of Persona users venture through different labyrinths, figuring out a way to reach the very end of those said labyrinths, while taking out shadows along the way. Now I can understand making these kinds of changes when you have to remind yourself that the game we've been talking about all this time is on the 3DS of all things. So with that all said, I didn't mind crawling through all these labyrinths in a straight line while solving puzzles and defeating shadows. It was kind of disappointing that I couldn't roam free and explore the world I was in like I did in Tartarus and the TV world, all the while the floors always changed every time you enter those two places. But I did want to go further and further into these labyrinths. The changes don't stop there either. Now instead of having 4 members to fight alongside you, you can now have 5 members in your team to fight off the shadows. Not only that, but the members of the Velvet Room have also come to the conclusion that since there are 2 Persona users in the area with the power of the Wild card, which allows the 2 protagonists to have multiple Personas and swap them out, for among confusing reasons, both of our protagonists lose the power of the Wild card, which means Narukami is only allowed to use Izanagi, and Yuki can now only summon Orpheus. But because of this coincidence, every single member of both the investigation team and C's can have another persona to control. A sub-persona, as the game likes to call it. So yeah, now everyone aside from our protagonist can use 2 personas at the same time. That is, except for Zen and Rei who have powers of their own, which, I will admit, is a pretty neat idea. It makes sense that since there are 2 people that have a power that should only be for one person, but 2 people with the wild card are in the same area, things would go out of control, resulting in the protagonist only being able to have 2 personas, and their gangs would end up having the same power as well. Even Rise and Fuka, since they could use their persona's power while everyone else battles it out. To use their personas, you hit the battle command leader skill. Rise's persona Himiko allows your team to attack first, while Fuka's persona Lucia heals your team. Although, you're better off having Fuka's persona during battles instead of Rise. Sorry Rise, I still love you and all, but with the other things I have to talk about concerning the gameplay, you're definitely going to need those healing powers. Now there's the matter of battling the shadows. Well, okay, not just the shadows, since in this game there are these creatures called Field On Enemy, or FOE. Gee, I wonder what that spells out ever so subtly. Standing in your way. And you best not battle these things until you're at a certain level, otherwise they'll wipe the floor with you. Actually, for that matter, that same statement can be traced back to the whole game in general. Now, I will admit that I do have some fun battling. It's nowhere near as satisfying and fun compared to the other games, but whatever. But on the other hand, one thing I can't stand in this damn game is the overly long and repetitive level grinding. It should be common knowledge that level grinding is the worst thing to put up with when playing an RPG. It may be just fine and dandy at first, but after a while it gets really dull and boring rather quickly. But at least with the other numerous amounts of RPGs I played, the level grinding is very minimal. It doesn't last very long until I'm at a decent level to move on in the game, or if I come up with a perfect strategy to defeat a certain enemy or boss. But the level grinding in Persona Q is so goddamn obnoxious. I cannot tell you how many hours I had to put into this game just to reach a particular level just to move on to the next floor of a labyrinth, or a new labyrinth overall for that matter. And it wouldn't be as bad as I'm making it out to be if the bosses and enemies in this game weren't such annoying sacks of cheap juiciness. Particular enemies have some powerful combos that they can pull off of you, and even worse, there are even enemies that can attack twice. Alright, look here. If it's the final boss of a game, I'm more than willing to accept my opponent being able to attack twice. Since that makes sense, you're at the very end of a game and this is the final challenge for you. But if it's not that, or just an average everyday enemy for that matter, that to me isn't even fair in the slightest. And trust me, enemies that can attack twice combined with attacks that can nearly kill you with one hit until you found their weakness, or at a certain level, happens way more often than it's welcome. And this is essentially why you're better off having Fuka's healing powers throughout the entire game instead of Rise's powers. Oh, and let's also mention that you don't start out with that much health or power for your Persona to start the game. The amount of health and Persona power you begin with at the start of Persona 3 and 4 was a decent amount, but this? Yeah, that's not a lot to start out with at the very beginning of the game. You can't use your Persona's moves that often with a count that low, which might I remind you are key ingredients you need in order to even defeat anything and to move further into the game. Yeah, so what's up with that Persona Q, huh? The battle system is so damn confusing too. In the former games beforehand, once you spot an enemy's weakness, you can attack another time. And if you knock down all of the shadows you're battling, your team will prepare an all-out attack, which has them charging at the shadows, dealing a good chunk of damage to their health. But in this game, if you find a shadow's weakness, your reward is being able to use a move your Persona has for no cost and attack first. If more than 3 of your team members hit a shadow's weakness and don't get damaged by the enemy, then they can perform that all-out attack. Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes you'll be able to perform it, sometimes you won't. Did I mention that the battling in this game can be confusing? So when you see an opportunity, don't you dare decline it. Your idiot levels would have to match Kel's if you had the stupidity to decline that chance. And remember when I said I had a complaint with the soundtrack? Well, seeing as how the game has an abnormal amount of level grinding, it gets rather aggravating listening to the same damn song during battling with anything that isn't the bosses and FOEs in this game. Sure, Persona 3 had the same normal battle theme throughout the entire game, but at least that song playing was Mass Destruction, one of the catchiest and funkiest battle themes in existence. Think of the video game version of Uptown Funk. And Persona 4... okay, I honestly wasn't much of a fan of that battle theme. It was one of the more weaker songs in an otherwise great soundtrack for that game. Thankfully, they changed it to something more epic in the remastered Golden version, and only played the normal battle theme from the original game when you catch an enemy off guard and get a player advantage off of it. The normal battle theme is less repetitive and annoying on the Persona 3 side, I suppose, but even so, it's still overplayed. So there was my complaint with the soundtrack, and if you thought that was a mouthful, wait until you see what happens in Yasogami High. You're only allowed to go into certain sections in Yasogami High. These are Workshop, Nurse's Office, Velvet Room, Stroll, Labyrinth, Party, and Save. The workshop is where Theodore will provide weapons, armor, accessories, and items. The Nurse's Office contains Elizabeth, who will heal all of your characters. The Velvet Room is where you can fuse together 2 or more personas into one powerful persona. Strolls will have random events where the characters will interact between one another. Labyrinth has the many different labyrinths you can explore in, obviously. Party is where you can swap out members in your team. And Save... yeah, you all know what that is, that's a given. Now I'm mostly focusing on the Workshop and Nurse's Office for this one. In terms of the weapons and armor, it's going to be a tough hassle to get the toughest defenses and the strongest offenses. Let's count the number of characters that can battle. Rise and Fuka won't count here. You have 7 characters on the investigation team and 9 characters from Cease, plus Sen and Rei who fight as a duo. That makes a grand total of 17 characters that can battle. Now the numbers by themselves is a decent amount and you don't have to worry about running out of money, oh excuse me, they're Japanese, yen to give them the best weapons and armor for the most part. But combined? That's quite a lot of yen to waste. Especially if you're someone like me who likes to play as specific characters until they're at a certain level and swap them out for someone new and repeat. And then there's the nurse's office. Aside from the request you can take to get experience points and an item out of it, you can heal your whole entire team here. Gee, aren't I a total brainiac, right? But the catch is, you have to pay in order to heal. At first I thought it was because of the amount of damage my guys took. The more damage you take, the more yen you would have to pay. But once I got back one time after only a few inches of my health were gone, I saw that the cost was still high. And then it hit me. OMG, this game is seriously increasing the amount of yen I have to pay by 100 for each hospital visit. Now keep in mind that it's not the fact that I have to actually pay something in order to heal my whole team. My problem is that I have to pay a completely ludicrous amount of yen for each visit, even if it's just a slight inch of my health that's gone. I'm okay with having to pay a certain amount of money to heal. Games like Yu-Gi-Oh! The False-Bound Kingdom had a tolerable healing system. I had the option to pay for that healing system, and again, the more damage my team took, the more money it costs. But having to pay this much yen for this amount of damage? Are you joshing me here, Elizabeth? Look, I know you're, well, you, and you can get pretty curiously silly sometimes. But I think that's a little too much there. Finally, the bosses are pretty weak. The first boss against the Queen of Hearts is one of my least favorite bosses ever. Why do you feel the need to respond your stupid fucking car soldiers? Merciful clergyman and kind doctor are decent at best. Best Friend is probably the best fight in the game since it feels rather intense even if it still has its cheap shots. And the last two bosses of the game are the most absolute fucking goddamn cheapest pieces of bullshit misery that I've ever faced in a video game. Fuck 'em. I know I've been going on and on about the gameplay for quite a while, but there are just so many levels of unnecessary crap here, whether it's the battling, or paying to heal and or buy armor and weapons. And for me personally, no matter how great the story, characters, and presentation for a game might be, the important thing for me is that the game is fun, since that's where you push the buttons on your controller and actually do something in the game. And boy oh boy, Persona Q's gameplay is easily the weakest aspect that shoots down everything else that was great about this game. It's mostly the painful, insignificant amount of level grinding that brings it down to the gutter. It happens throughout the entire game, and since there are some enemies that are pretty damn powerful and can attack twice for some stupid damn reason, it just drags on and on, resulting in you having to go to a different floor or a different labyrinth just to get to a certain level just to beat an everyday normal enemy. It's no fun. I will admit I did have some fun playing the game. But for the most part, it was pretty damn boring and exhausting that it literally gave me a headache. Quite a damn shame, really. Man, I really wanted to like this game the same way I did with Persona 3 and 4 so much. Sadly, it ended up being a huge letdown. I will admit finding out where I was supposed to go in the labyrinths was pretty enjoyable. The characters are as awesome as always, and are the shining attraction for the game. The chibi art style and the environments in the labyrinths are impressive, and I at least had a tiny bit of overall fun when it came to the battling, but the gameplay in itself is extremely weak, mostly due to the tedious and despicable level grinding contained. But at the same time, I can't really entirely hate this game. It's kind of like your two favorite actors in a movie together as the main stars, or your two favorite restaurants combined into one. No matter the outcome, there's still something that keeps me invested to keep it in okay territory. And that's what Persona Q was for me. Was it as good as I wanted it to be? Sadly, no. Could it have been better? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, at least it still keeps me a little bit entertained. Which is why I consider this game to be okay at best. Even so, it's so far the weakest Persona game I've currently played. Keywords being so far. You're better off just watching playthroughs of the game on YouTube rather than actually buying the game. But I guess if you want to get into the Persona series and a 3DS or 2DS is all you've got for the time being, you can pick up a copy somewhere and give it a try. You'll have to keep in mind that 3 and 4 are inferior to this game though, but do as you wish. I still thought Persona Q was an okay game, but man, I can't help but feel a little disappointed that it wasn't as good as I'd hoped for.